It's one of the greatest blessings of all. She just started marching. I was like, Je vous salue, Marie, pleine de grâce. You're going to want to turn off this podcast when I'm done. Hello and welcome to Our Hearts Are Restless. My name is Alexis and thank you so much for joining me. Story time. So I've been dealing with this chronic illness, I can say, ailment, from my right ear for the last 2.5 years. And this past year I've been getting vertigo. And I noticed the more it happened that the vertigo, when I feel it coming on, that I would have to go to the bathroom. And so the more it happened, I noticed it every single time. And it was also in correlation with my cycle that these bouts of vertigo would come. And I thought, okay, well, then I'm going to have to, this probably has something to do with what I'm eating. It was difficult, but in order for me to stay on this pretty restrictive diet of elimination diet, basically, of the foods I didn't eat. So I didn't eat dairy, I didn't eat gluten and sugar, the normal culprits, to see what would happen. I live in France. It's horrible. It's just like cheese and bread everywhere. So anyway, so to stay on this diet, I relied heavily on podcasts, to listening to podcasts. And I would have, podcasts about nutrition in the background every single day. And I stayed on this diet really, really well because of the podcast. The podcasts were like my personal coach, basically. So I would just hear it all the time, constantly. Don't eat this kind of thing every day to help me not eat bread, not eat cheese and all the delicious stuff. And lo and behold, yes, it did help with the vertigo, and it did help reduce the symptoms. I had one flare up. I had one instance of vertigo, but it never fully became full-blown vertigo to where I'm basically, I cannot do anything. I'm lying down for at least an hour. And when it's really bad, for the next 24 hours, I don't do anything. I can't clean. I can't really cook. I just stay alive and not do much. And thankfully my children are so intuitive, especially my daughter. She's so, she knows when something's wrong, and immediately she'll just help me. And so, so I had listened to these podcasts all the time. It's like a nonstop thing. But then, it helped me health-wise. But then I started to notice that I just had these podcasts in the background all of the time. From the moment I wake up, while I'm, serving my kids breakfast and stuff, and to the very, until my husband comes home in the evening. And I noticed that my children were noticing, Mom, you're here, but you're not here. Especially my son. And my son, he's a mama's boy. Yeah, we had from the very beginning, my son, because I think a part of it is we were separated at birth because of complications when he was born. And so he and I have this relationship, and he really knows when I'm here versus when I'm not here. And I noticed that I started to get just irritated at my children when I would be listening to a podcast, and then there's some important information I didn't hear, and I would kind of snap at them. I was like, hey, stop talking, stop screaming, stop, just stop. But certain things I would have heard, I had heard a million times. Yeah, you can listen to a podcast on the same topic over and over again, and au bout d'un moment, how do you say that? At a certain point, you've heard everything, right? They're just regurgitating the same information over and over and over again. It's not the same books. I know that a little book rant. It's not the same with books because there's some things you just can't learn unless you read a book in great detail. And podcasts, there are certain topics in podcasts that you just can't get into the depth of that subject unless you read. So anyway, I noticed that I would just snap at my children. There was no good reason. Like they were just playing, and for some reason I'm just like, I just need to hear what that person said, even though I heard it 10 times that day from a different person or from that same person. So I knew something had to change. I was reliant on this background noise. So extra context, I'm a stay-at-home mom. And yeah, it can be lonely in the sense of like a relationship with adults. I don't see very many adults. I'm with my children, specifically my daughter because she doesn't go to school and my son does, but I pick him up at lunch. And so I do see people outside. And I'm quite an introvert. I quite like being alone. But at some point or another, you do want to have this, adult relationship. I'm only human. and so that's why sometimes you want that. I'm sure many parents can relate, parents who stay at home moms, stay at home dads. You can relate that it's just that podcast is not, or the TV or whatever, the music is not just to listen, to learn. It's like to be with someone else, which is understandable. And so I noticed that. And also when it came to the health things that I started listening to, I became paranoid of things that I was eating. Broccoli's horrible, or meat is going to kill. Like everything, everything in the health world, everything is going to kill you. No matter what you eat, you can eat vegetables, you can eat fruit, you can eat meat. It's all going to kill you, slowly but surely. That's what it was like. And I would just get paranoid, and then I would be serving my family food that's completely different from mine sometimes because I was serving them the same things as me, but like my children just like, Mom, no more lentils, please. No more lentils, please. So I would have to, from time to time, change up what I was eating for something else for them. And so when I would give them the food, I would get paranoid. I'm like, I'm killing my children because look, they're not eating what I'm eating, and what I'm eating is healthy and what they're eating is not. With all that snapping at my children and getting paranoid about what I'm eating and just like having this constant distraction in the background, I knew something had to change. And so I embarked on not listening to any podcasts or music for like 20 days. From the end of November till I think Christmas time. I had to, a little bit more than Christmas was. So it was about like 20 something days that I didn't listen to podcasts. And it was great. First of all, like the first day, I didn't listen to anything. I reached for my phone like quick, and I'm like, oh wait, no, I'm not supposed to listen to anything. I know that I'm not supposed to. So I didn't. And then I proceeded to do chores. And then I remembered that I actually really like, it's going to sound really weird, but I like the sound of hearing the knife hit the chopping board when I'm chopping, or the clinking of the utensils as I wash the dishes, or even hearing clothes when I'm folding. It's such a gift. We don't realize that hearing those things is such a gift. And also I was more mindful of what I was doing. And in turn, because I was mindful of what I was doing, I began to say, just spontaneously, thank you, Lord. Thank you for the dishes that I'm washing. Thank you for the clothes that I'm folding, etc., etc. So as a result, I started to pray more. And that is something that we forget, is that silence is where God talks to us. Silence is where God speaks. And if we have constant background noise, we're not going to listen to him. He just came more often, if that makes sense. I was able to listen to him. I was able to hear him. That's what I mean. I was able to hear him more. He's always there. God's always there. But we're not always there. Just like with my children, when my children want me, God not doesn't need me. He wants me to be with him. And so I listened more and I heard him more. And in turn, because I was able to listen to him, I was able to pray and communicate with him more. And it's such a blessing to have silence. We never have complete silence, especially in a house with children, little children. But even that in general, we never have real silence. But when we do have quiet, at least from all the distractions in the world, we don't realize how much of a blessing it is to just be and to just do things, and to just pray when it's quiet. Ora et labora, right? To just pray and work. It is such a blessing because there's so many people in the world out there, and like myself included at times too, that we're just so attracted to distraction. We just never want to be by ourselves. And we never just want to do one thing at a time. We're cleaning. We have to have a podcast in the back. We have to have music in the back. But for so much of time, man has not had podcasts and like the phone on them all the time. And that was another thing. I was always like looking at my phone, and it's just a horrible thing to show your children. But anyway, we haven't had these, we're so gâtés. We're so, what is the word in English? We're so spoiled. We're so spoiled with distraction, with entertainment, and we just don't want to just sit. I'm capable of sitting and reading, but reading is an active thing, and when you read, you can't do anything else. You are forced to be quiet and to read. Some people like to read with music in the background. I can't. I prefer when it's completely silent because I just get too into it. It's like a trance for me. I get in a trance. I just read and read and read. Anyway, so where was I? Yes, so God spoke to me and I heard him a lot more. And then I listened and I prayed a lot more. And I became calmer as a mom. And oh my goodness, there's this one time. So I love to sing. And that's something I did a lot more as well. I would sing to my children. And my children kind of use me like a jukebox. They'll just tell me like, I want this song or I want that song. And so I'll just sing it to them. And so one time I was folding laundry, hanging laundry, whatever, just trying to do laundry in the bathroom. And I had no podcasts, no music. So I was like, okay, this is an opportunity to pray. And I thought, okay, let's sing the prayer, because St. Augustine says, when you sing your prayers, you basically pray twice. I started to sing the rosary. So I get to the first decade and I start to sing the Ave, but in French because it's a joyful tune. So it goes like, Je vous salue Marie comblée de grâce, le Seigneur est avec vous, vous êtes bénie entre toutes les femmes, et Jésus, votre enfant, est béni. Sainte Marie, Mère de Dieu, priez pour nous, pauvres pécheurs, maintenant et à l'heure de notre mort. Amen, amen, alleluia. So I started to sing that, and my daughter loves to sing. And so she hears me praying, and then she comes in, and one of the greatest blessings of all, she just started marching. I was like, Je vous salue, Marie, pleine de grâce. And it was so adorable. I started laughing out loud because I was like, oh my gosh, Lord, thank you so much for this great, great blessing of seeing my daughter just like marching to Hail Mary in French and just going around the room. And this would never have happened. That would never have happened. And I would never have had that happen or witnessed that had I been listening to podcasts, because there's children know, they know when they're not, the focal point of attention. It's not that they need to be the center of attention all the time, but it's like they need to know that you are there with them. And so if you sing instead of, if you like to sing, instead of listening to music or a podcast, then sing, because like children love that. So that was one of the greatest blessings I had, thanks to not listening to podcasts. Another thing that happened is that when I decided to listen to podcasts again, I didn't want to. Like, I would look at my phone, I'd look at the podcast, and there are so many podcasts I like. Like, I love Christopher and Wendy West. I love EMJ Live. I love Patrick Coffin. And from time to time, Pints with Aquinas. But I really, like, I would look at the list, and there would be one or two that like really interest me. But then I would say, like, no, I'll just save it for later. Like, I actually like the quiet. And so that's another thing. The quieter, the more you're accustomed to it being quiet, the more you seek that silence as well. Now, I do listen to podcasting. I am listening to podcasts again, but I really try to limit it. I've been listening to podcasts in the evening when I'm completely alone and my husband's knocked out and my children are asleep. That's when I'll listen to most of it to catch up. If I see that my children are in the room, playing in the room, or completely busy and like don't care that I'm here, then I'll put it on. But now I do like it quiet and peaceful. So I urge you to turn this podcast off, all your other podcasts, and just be in the moment and live and just be and listen. Listen to God. Listen to that still small voice who is trying to communicate with you, but you're just distracted by the noise. Maybe you can do like one podcast a day, one podcast a week. I've done that. Just limit it and embrace that silence so that God can speak to you and that you can speak to him. And like, there's your time that you get with him completely free. Like, I know everybody's not a stay-at-home mom and stuff, but on that commute to work, do you really need to listen to a podcast? Do you really need to listen to a podcast while you work out? Is it really necessary? Like, how did everybody else before podcasts, before, portable phones, smartphones came, what did they do? They either, they were just with themselves, walked around, looked at the trees. So I urge you to do that. Let me know if you've tried it, if you have any advice, if you have stopped completely listening to any podcast. Well, I mean, if you're listening to me right now, well, that doesn't count. You are listening to a podcast. But let me know in the comments below if you've ever done like a podcast fast or a music fast, and if you have any advice, and tell me if you're gonna do it, and eventually tell me what happened. Anyway, that's it. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I'll see you next time. God bless.